Hey, what's up guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Buster Blader deck profile. So this is an amazing deck that actually plays one of the most nostalgic monsters in the entire game, Yu-Gi-Oh!, in the form of Buster Blader. This deck is really crazy at how many boss monsters it can actually get out to be able to lock your opponent down and turn everything that your opponent has into dragons. Even with this really cool, amazing, cute Link monster now in the deck, it's a really good lockdown deck and really cool at OTKing your opponent. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because we have some awesome awards you guys, like getting your name in the description of every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, or even getting requested deck profile just like this one every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Buster Blader. So you need 3 copies of Buster Blader in this deck, and yes, I have the original Pharaoh Servant play set of this. It's a really good card in this deck, and it's overall just an amazing monster. What it does is it gains 500 attack for every dragon-type monster on your opponent's side of the field and in their graveyard, which you have cards in this deck that turns all of the monsters on your opponent's side of the field, guess what, into dragon monsters. We then play a single copy of the Buster Blader the Destruction Swordsman. Buster Blader the Destruction Swordsman is an alright boss monster, but it's not quite as good as the original one. It becomes Buster Blader while in the field or in the graveyard. And then this monster, if a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, then you can target one of those destroyed monsters and equip to this card. And then once per turn, you can send a monster card you control that is equipped to this card to the graveyard and destroy all monsters your opponent controls with the same type as that monster sent to the graveyard. Really good card, just you want to summon the fusion a lot more. We then play 3 copies of Buster the Destruction Swordsman. This card is the searcher of the deck. This card is really good and the tuner to summon out a lot of the other cards. What this card does is when it's normal summon, you get to add a Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand. And then you contribute this card to special summon a Buster Blader from your graveyard, and if this card is in the graveyard and you control a Buster Blader, you can discard a Destruction Sword to special summon this card, which is pretty good to be able to grab those Buster Bladers back from the graveyard. We then play 2 copies of Dragon Buster the Destruction Sword. This card is really good. I'm surprised it still hasn't gotten banned with Union Carrier running around everywhere, but this card is still pretty good to let you target a Buster Blader you control and equip it with this card. And then if you equip this card to a Buster Blader, or you equip it to a monster, while it's equipped to that monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. It is also a tuner, which is pretty helpful. We then put in a single copy of Wizard Buster Destruction Sword. I actually bumped this card back in as a 1-of. I dropped one of the Dragon Buster, the Destruction Sword, to put in this, which is pretty cool. What this card does is it makes it so your opponent basically cannot they cannot use cards in their graveyard. You can send this card to the graveyard and then target 1 Destruction Sword in your graveyard except another copy of itself and add it back to your hand. And then also, it's just an overall really good card because it lets you target a Buster Blader and equip this card from your hand or your side of the field to that monster. And then while this card is equipped to that monster, your opponent's cards in the graveyard cannot activate their effects, which is just overall amazing. Then we kind of play a level 1 monster mash in a way to get out our copy of the Buster Whelp as quickly as possible. And then it's 3 copies of Jester Confit. This card's really good because it lets you special summon it to your side of the field for free, and then you can use it as a link material. And then we play 3 copies of Txne Spirit Adahara. Adahara can just instantly special summon it to yourself, instantly special summon itself to your side of the field for basically for free, as long as you don't control an effect monster. If you do control an effect monster, you can normal summon it out, which is not that big of a deal, but it's just overall a really good card to be able to get on your side of the field as quickly as possible. If you draw into it, you want to just summon it, special summon it, and then normal summon on a Buster Whelp, and then grab whatever card you need from the deck with your copy of your Buster Whelp, and then immediately link summon into copy of the Protector Whelp of the Destruction Sword, which is going to get you even more plays. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. For the spells, we are playing not quite as many spells as traps, in my opinion. What we're playing is 1 copy of Call by the Grave. Call by the Grave is really good in the deck just to be able to stop your opponent's hand traps. 1 copy of 1 for 1 just to be able to special summon out any of our level 1 monsters from the deck. And just an overall really good card. Now keep in mind, Buster Whelp has to be normal summoned, so you can't actually special summon it to get that search because it has to be normal summoned, which is a little bit of a downer for that card, but hey, it's still a really good card. We play a single copy of Upstart because playing a 39 card deck is really good. Monster Reborn just as a great extender in the deck. Foolish Burial to send what you need to the graveyard when you need it. 1 copy of Instant Fusion to lock down with Millenniumizer Strict. magical mid-break field because it makes it so your cards cannot be targeted, but you have to activate this at either the beginning of the main phase 1 or main phase 2, and then during each player's main phase 1, monsters on the field cannot be destroyed by their opponent's card effects, and also neither player can target monsters they control. You cannot set field spell cards either, which is this is the only field spell we play. I believe this is a 1-of because it's just really good to help with hand traps, which is a combination, kind of a combination that I kind of came up with where you play Instant Fusion to get out Millennium Eyes, you have Call by the Grave to deal with the original way that you dealt with them, and then Mid-Break Field is the other budget option that you can play to be able to make it so it shuts down some hand traps like Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit and other cards like that, maybe even Effect Veiler here and there too. We then play, for the last 1-of, we play a single copy of Destruction Swordsman Fusion. I actually bumped this card back in because it's kind of like Super Poly if you have Buster Dragon on your side of the field, which is pretty cool because it lets you fusion summon one monster that lists a Buster Blader as a material from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or either side of the field as fusion materials. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can send a card from your hand to the graveyard, and then if you do, you add this card back from your graveyard to your hand, which is really good. Now, the interesting thing is about this card is that your Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, just requires a Dragon type monster and a Buster Blader. So if you have a Buster Blader in your hand and you have Buster Dragon on your side of the field, turning everything into a Buster Blade or a Dragon monster, then you can use that card, the Destruction Swordsman Fusion, to summon the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman by using a Dragon monster on your opponent's side of the field that could be problematic against you, to be able to fusion summon into this using a Buster Blade and a monster on your opponent's side of the field. So it's a really good card. We then play 3 copies of Where Art Thou. Where Art Thou works really well with level 1 monsters because you can just use this card to be able to add any level 1 monster from your deck to your hand, which can be super helpful in certain scenarios. So for instance, if you have a copy of your Buster Whelp in your hand, you can normal summon this card out, add a particular Buster card that you need from your deck to your hand, a Destruction Swordsman card from your deck to your hand, and then you can add Jester Comfy from your deck to your hand, special summon out the Jester Comfy to your side of the field, and then link them together to summon out your copy of your Destruction, or your Buster Protector Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman, which is super helpful just to be able to get those additional plays to get your link monsters out on your side of the field. We then play 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods lets you send a spell or trap from your deck to the graveyard, which is usually going to be your traps between your copy of the Destruction Swordsman Memories and prologue of the Destruction Swordsman. Really good, and it's also good Ash Blossom bait. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is ridiculously good in this deck. It makes it so you're essentially playing 5 to 6 copies of every single trap in your deck, because you can just banish a copy of a normal trap and then set the exact same copy from your deck to your side of the field, which is pretty good. Like for instance, if I banish a copy of Destruction Swords Flash, I can set the other copy that's in my deck to my side of the field, which is super helpful to be able to get me additional plays. Now, Destruction Sword Flash is a really good card in this deck too, because if you control a fusion monster that lists Buster Blader as a material, you can banish all monsters your opponent controls, and then when that card effect is activated that targets a Buster Blader monster you control, except during the damage step, you can banish this card from your graveyard and negate the activation if you destroy that card. So basically, he uses the flash of the blade, and he's like, hey, you can't target me. We then play 2 copies of Destruction Sword Memories. Destruction Sword Memories is, in my opinion, the best artwork of the entire deck, and it's a really good card. It helps you fusion summon. You discard a Destruction Sword card to special summon a Buster Blader from your deck, and then the really good effect of this card, which is why you want it in the graveyard with copies of Foolish Burial Goods, and your copies of your Protector Whelp, is you can use this card in the graveyard to banish this card from your graveyard to fusion summon a Buster Blader, the Dragon Destruction Swordsman, from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed from it in your graveyard, which is pretty good. We then play 3 copies of Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman. This card's really, really, really good in this deck because it has the ability that you can send a Destruction Sword and a Buster Blader monster from your deck to the graveyard, except another copy of itself, and then you special summon a Buster Dragon from your extra deck, to your side of the field, but destroy it during the next end phase, during the end phase of the next turn. And you can manage this card from your graveyard, and this turn, destruction sword cards you control cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effect, which is pretty good just to be able to negate the destruction of your cards. Overall, really what you want to do is get this card in the graveyard as quickly as possible and set this card so you can summon destruction or buster sword or buster dragon on your opponent's end phase. And then once you summon it on your end phase, you can then activate the copy of this, summon the Destruction Swordsman, and then go in against your opponent while your copy of your Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordsman, is just negating every single monster on the field. So it's really, really good. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Protector Whelp. Protector Whelp is really good in this deck. Protector Whelp has a really neat effect that if this card is link summoned, you can send a Destruction Sword card from your deck to the graveyard. Then you can special summon a Buster Blader from your hand. And at the end of the damage step, at the end of the battle phase, if your opponent controls no monsters, you can activate one. You can target one Buster Blader that you control that did not declare an attack this turn, and inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack, or equal to that monster's attack, which is pretty good just to be able to inflict an additional 28 to 2600 to your opponent, depending on how much your Buster Blader has. 2 copies of Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. This deck is not complete without playing at least 2 copies of him. He is ridiculously good in this deck because he has the ability that he must be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card cannot attack directly, which is why the copy Protector Whelp is so good because he still lets you inflict 2800 if you can't attack your opponent directly. He gains 1000 attack for each Dragon type monster your opponent controls and is in their graveyard, and then you change all Dragon monsters your opponent controls to defense position, and also Dragon monsters your opponent controls cannot activate their effects. And if this card attacks a defense position monster, he also inflicts piercing damage. You play 2 copies of Buster Dragon, which makes all monsters your opponent field Dragon type monsters, and then once per turn, if you do not control a Buster Blader, you can target a Buster Blader in your graveyard and special summon it. And then once per turn, during your opponent's turn, you can target a Buster Blader monster you control and equip it with a Dragon or a Destruction Sword monster from your hand or from your graveyard, which is pretty cool, and it's a quick effect to be able to do that. We then play a Link package in here, which is a single copy of Access Code Talker just to be able to pop cards on the field, Nightmare Unicorn to spin stuff, Nightmare Phoenix to pop spells and traps, Crystron Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber helps out because it helps you link climb in the deck. You don't necessarily have to play Needle Fiber, but it's here just in case you need it. 1 copy of Link Reba because you play so many level 1s in the deck. And then for the other monsters that we play in the deck, we play a single copy of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss because you can use this and a level 1 tuner monster with the copy of Buster Dragon to summon out your copy of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, which is a ridiculously good card in this deck to be able to negate additional cards. Borreload Savage, really easy to go into with a level 7 Buster Blader in any of the tuners that you have, especially with playing stuff like Needle Fiber in the deck to be able to just go in for additional plays, and Link climbing in this deck as well. Millenniumize Restrict to be able to negate monster effects, and then Thousanize Restrict as well to be able to gobble up a monster that's problematic against you. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a really cool nostalgic deck to be able to play Buster Blader. It's probably one of my favorite nostalgic decks that they've created recently, and just keep giving it more support. It needs a couple more cards, don't get me wrong, to be really consistent, but it's just overall really, really, really fun to play around with, and I enjoy playing with it, especially with the Link monster now in the game. Like, it was a little hard during the Link format, this deck could not be played during the Link format, which was really sad. But actually, after they released the Protector Whelp, I picked this deck up again and started playing with it a little bit more, and I really fell in love with this deck all over again, and it's just super fun to play around with. I really wish they give it a little bit more support, but hopefully, with all these sets coming out, like with Phantom Knights getting support and Phantom Rage, and then Blazing Vortex getting Armed Dragon support, maybe we get a Buster Blader pack or something like that. We got a Gaia the Fierce Knight pack, maybe we get a Buster Blader pack. So, anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below, and don't forget to check out the Patreon down in the description, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.